Hey everyone, we are back. Welcome to Rankable. I'm your host as usual, Jared Thomas, Senior Account Executive at iPullRank. I am joined by my lovely co-host, the best AM in the game, Chantel Branch.
Hello, good afternoon.
You always shy on that part. I don't know why. But as you guys know, thank you for joining today. We have, today's another version of our Rankable Women's Highlight, Women's History Month Spotlight, and we have a very, very, very special guest today. So, our guest today has over 15 plus years of experience in the marketing industry, serving in managerial and executive roles at companies such as Nutraceutical Corp, Ancestry.com, Brainstorm, and currently serving as the Chief Marketing Officer at Lendio. So I'd like to introduce our special guest today, Miss Karen Peterson. How are you?
Oh, I am so happy to be here. This was a fun conversation. It's an honor, honestly, to sit and talk to you. So
likewise, it's absolute honor and a pleasure. Thank you for joining. I know we had Dave here a couple of months ago, and it was a great conversation of how you guys pivoted from COVID and some of the amazing things you were doing internally. So I definitely kudos and shout out to David as well. But today is all about you, Karen. We'd love to hearing about you and some of the amazing things. I've read your story. I would love our audience to get to know you. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about your journey a little bit and how did you get into the marketing field and to today, and why are you so passionate about it?
It's a funny story, and I'll share some of these different journey moments along the road. Just not because it's anything relevant overall, like how I got here, but I think just the fact that it is a kind of a windy road sometimes, and there's a lot of different choices that can be right. There's a few wrong decisions and a ton of right decisions. So actually, I thought I loved math, and I was going to kind of follow my dad and his footsteps and be an engineer. I was going to a school. I was accepted into an engineering program, and then I actually got a scholarship to a different school that didn't have an engineering program, but was way better economically. And my parents were like, "You're going to the school with the scholarship." So I had to pivot, and I wasn't going to be an engineer anymore because they didn't have that program. I decided I was going to be an attorney. I went through all school, did a double major with criminal justice and English, on a path to be a lawyer, took the LSAT, was accepted into a law school, and last minute decided to defer for a year. And because I was already working in kind of the legal field, doing contract administration and things like that, and just decided to hold off for a minute for a lot of different reasons. And decided I would do what I considered to be the next hardest thing at the time, which was not medical, because that's not for me, and thankfully for a lot of other people. I started an MBA program, and when I took my first marketing class, I thought, this is it. This is math, it's psychology, it's communication, it's the rigor that you get out of kind of law school, it's all of those things combined, and it just felt like it was this path that was custom built for someone who has this wide variety of interests like me. So that's why I share that kind of background, because I feel like some of the best marketing leads that I've ever had the privilege to work with came from computer science, finance, really diverse backgrounds, because marketing is incredibly diverse. So I will say this, I feel like marketing is one of those fields where if you are not actively trying to speed to keep up and keep in front of, you will get left behind just by being good at your normal job. Like it's so innovative and changing. So anyway.
That's an excellent point, and it's funny because we are doing our women's history. So as a woman, am I getting any feedback, or is it just?
No, you're good.
So as a woman, I do want to ask you about work in marketing. Oftentimes women are very efficient, but sometimes they can be underestimated and overlooked to grow. So you've been able to advance through your career and build a family and look great. Is there anything what advice would you give to a woman who's like in the middle of her career, who has aspirations to go towards the C level? How do you avoid that underestimation, overlooked, but sucking of all of that work product from you without the results? In terms of like you're climbing up the ladder, what would you advise women to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think different paths are right for different people. You know, I really value people on my team who have aspirations for a certain level, and they don't necessarily want to ever be the vice president or the level. And I think that's amazing, right? And it's a season for them. And then the people who really do want to continue and invest and grow and kind of have more leadership opportunities in their career, I think surrounding yourself with people who will be objective and push you and kind of keep you with yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I have had different mentors and leaders at different points say things to me like, why did you not put your name in, you know, why did you not step into the ring for that opportunity? Like, why did you hold yourself back? You know, whether it's my husband keeps it very real with me, you know, and he feels like I'm not, like I'm being too hard on myself. I do think one of a good quality of a leader is to be humble and vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I also think that there can be a tendency to be too harsh on yourself when I'm way like more accommodating and lenient with other people.
Yeah.
I will say too, and you know, Chantel, I don't know if I'm answering your question right, but when I left Ancestry, there was this moment that I had where, you know, we were kind of announcing me leaving, and I had women, especially women, I had men too, but especially the women is what stood out to me, in different departments across the company, from engineering and development or the international program or anything, purposely kind of reach out to me and say, thank you for being a mentor to me, or thank you for being an example of a woman leader who's also a really, you know, like a mom who's trying her best, you know, a mom and a leader. And it was a moment where I think I did not realize that people were looking at me like that.
Of course.
You know? And I actually took it like a lot more seriously in the sense that I thought, wow, we really do have a responsibility to each other, help each other, like lift each other up and be good examples, and people are watching. And so to go back to your question, I would say look for people that you admire and want to emulate, and be the person that people look to and live up to, and take risks and let people push you to do that when you feel like you can't. Like have somebody who will do it.
Totally. I would even add, don't be afraid to ask. The only way you get to where you want to go is by learning from the people who are currently there, right? So that was something I messed up early in my career. I used to think, hey, I'm a sales guy, I'll get it done, and yeah, I'm getting quota, yay. But it's like 9 years, 10 years in, when I first got my first mentor, I've had the best year I've had in my career last year because of the information guidance I'm getting, right? You should do this differently, Jared, you should do that. So don't be afraid to ask. You know, I think that's a great thing that you're doing, and emulate people that you want to be like. And then for what stood out to me just now, I love the fact that you're juggling both, right? We got hit with a pandemic, you're in a new role, you're a mother of 4, and I'll be honest, I'm struggling with 2 kids. So I would love to know, like, what's your daily routine? Like, how do you balance, you know, the family's needs and the company organizational needs, and how do you kind of, you know, make sure you're effective at both? Because I'm struggling.
Listen, we are all in that boat together. I can tell you that. And again, I think we're all hardest on ourselves. And so I have a bunch. I'll share some ideas that are just, again, examples of some things that worked for me. So daily for me, and now all of these things, by the way, are in seasons. I said seasons before, but I would say that is super important for us to think about. Sometimes a season is a day-to-day thing. Sometimes it's a week-to-week thing. Sometimes it's months. Sometimes it's literally years. Like I have definitely had years of my career. You know, when I was in the interim CMO role at Ancestry, for the last kind of 2 years I was there, I was on the road way more than I was home. And that required a completely different adjustment. Yeah. I happen to be married to this amazing man who was an entrepreneur and owned his own businesses, and then has now been a stay-at-home, you know, father for the last 13 years.
That's amazing.
So how we operate as a team will fluctuate from time to time. If that for me, I was really invested in my career. I was working in a position that was demanded a lot, and it was really one that I was passionate about too. And he knew it. And he stepped in and he did way more. Other times though, I have been the one who like I come home and I want to cook dinner because I want to do I want to do that. It's not a role I'm playing. It's like I just want to do that.
Yeah.
But I do have like daily things that have worked for me throughout my career too.
Mm-hmm.
Very early on, my husband and I said, I will never walk in the house on the phone.
On the phone.
And what that means sometimes is that I will drive around for 30 minutes to finish up a call before I walk in the door, so that I never walk in and have to tell my kids to be quiet while I'm on the phone. So that's one of the things. I call my husband on my drive home every day, and we kind of go through his day and my day. So again, when I walk in the door, we don't have to cover that basis, and I can start digging in with my kids. I've had random things that I've done through the years, and this is a random small thing, but there was a time when my kids were really young and babies, and I was finding that I was sitting there putting on makeup in the morning, and I had kids and babies at my feet and wanting my attention. And I remember thinking, I don't want my kids to think that me looking in the mirror right now for 10 minutes is more important than them. So what I did is I got a makeup bag that I could carry with me, and I would leave 15 minutes early every day. I found this park on my commute into the office. I would pull into a parking spot right on this river. It was very beautiful and serene, and I would sit and put on makeup in the car every day. I did that for literally years.
Wow.
So
you had good lighting. I hope you had good lighting.
Good enough. I got really good at it.
Nice.
But I give these really weird examples in the sense that sometimes like the little things can be the big things. I'm in the car 2 hours a day for my commute, and I take great advantage of that time. I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to books. That's where a lot of times I can really dig in on something at work that I really want to investigate. There's content for everything, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I will roll the window down like old school style and like blast some music, and that's my drive home because that's what I need that day.
Yeah.
But I really maximize my time in the car and make sure that that commute is really effective for me. So, I mean, I could go on and on. There's like little things here and there, but again, I give them as examples because I did read a book several years ago, and I should have looked up the exact name. I think it's by Laura Vanderkam. And the book is called I Know How She Does It. Again, I'll find the exact title, but the whole book, the premise of that was, if we take a step back from our day-to-day and look at our lives with a little bit of a broader horizon or a wider perspective, you might have seasons again where you are really, really in work mode. Like right now with Lindia, with the PPP program, we are in a season for several months where it is intense and work needs me to be here, and I might be here more than I'm home. But then when PPP winds down, I have some time where I recalibrate and I make sure that I have some like really solid habits and time with my family. But the broader horizon is what allows me to do that. If I were to think about the day to day, then I think you get really lost in thinking, well, I'm at work, so that means I'm not doing a good job at home. Oh, now I'm at home and I could be doing something at work.
Right. So I would love to say this. You are doing an excellent job of bucking gender norms roles while also doing what works for you. I think that is the key of what the experience is of being a woman in business. So you are doing whatever works for you and your family, and you're doing that openly and publicly. It sounds like you don't have to pretend to be one thing or the other in order to have a happy personal life, nor do you have to pretend to be one thing or another professionally, which is a balance. And I think as women, we should talk more about that, because that's how you take that tightness off of your back, and you're probably able to flourish more because you know that you're free. So you're demonstrating your freedom in the way that you operate from a family and a business perspective is what people need to continue to see, because I think that will help us all.
For sure.
I think it's amazing. And I hope that, and I see women talking about this more, where it's like, you just figure it out, but you're figuring it out in a way where you still look happy. The look in your eye is not, help me. It's like, I'm figuring it out. I'm happy. I have a husband who I love, and it's just We're just doing stuff and it's working out. Also, you mentioned podcasts, which I love. What is your favorite business podcast?
You know what? If you were to somebody just asked me this the other day. I was like mentoring some university level students, and I said, I'm going to have to scroll through it. And I was like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling.
Yeah.
So, there's several ones that are built for CMOs.
Okay.
I love the ones that are about how you built this and talk about, how you started in the first place. Masters of Scale is really cool.
Okay.
But I do all the time get into specific kind of podcasts that I like to sometimes I want to dig in again. I want to think about how I'm organizing my team, or how you are thinking about content, marketing or management, or a different kind of specific thing. And I'll search for content and then find a new podcast that I like.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Guy Raz's podcast, How I Built This.
Yes.
Where he talks to the people who created, it's a mustard seed sometimes. And the next thing you know, the person's a billionaire. But listening to Joe Malone tell her story, listening to the gentleman who started Peloton telling their story, the Rent the Runway girls, when they were talking about it, it's very interesting. Some of the stories are not always positive stories. They don't all end well, but it's just, you need to know what the story is of how a business starts, and maybe what you can look out for, because some of the mistakes they made, in retrospect, they were like, I would do it the same way, or if I knew what I knew now, maybe I would have made some changes.
Exactly.
I know.
Yeah. Jackie, what is your business podcast that you like to listen to?
I like State of Demand Gen with Chris Walker. That's probably one of my favorite ones. Yeah, we actually had Chris on last week, so he's amazing.
No way.
Yeah, he's amazing. A good friend of ours, good friend of the show. So I love all the content. Dave Gerhardt's another one. He has a great Patreon group. He was also on. So those type of ones. But me personally, I don't really like going into the how to do it. Sometimes depending on what I'm working on. I love to hear the journey. I love to hear what did you go through? Like what made you make this decision that impacted your life and your career? That's what I love hearing.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And a friend of mine, she's a female founder, and she just posted something on LinkedIn that I so appreciated. That she said, she had received a lot of positive feedback and recognition for how her company had pivoted in the last year around COVID and everything else. And she said, listen, I just want you to know that didn't come without a cost, And I just appreciate hearing that sometimes, because even talking about my journey, when I talked about those 2 years, when I was on the road all the time, I literally was basically week to week back and forth between New York and San Francisco. It was one of the most exhilarating moments in my career. I loved my team. I loved the work I was doing. My husband was at home like a boss, like he's the PTA treasurer, and my husband's like a burly, bearded, dirt bike riding, manly man, and he's doing all this stuff and volunteering, everything was right. But it would kill me when I would be in a New York hotel at night and I would call and I would find out that I didn't really know anything that was going on in my kids' lives. All of that lived together, this exhilarating career and adoration for my husband and the team and everything else. And yet, all of those emotions sometimes can live together. And so I appreciate that when we talk about the journey and we're real about it, it's hard and it's good and you love it and it's hard and all those things together. So
in a situation like that, I had to do something like that where I had to travel when my youngest son was born. So when he was first born, the very first week, I had to travel back and forth to Florida for two months. So it was crazy. But I totally get what you mean. You're missing important moments, but at the same time, it gives you a sense of energy, a new energy, right? It's I can't fail at whatever I'm doing right now. This has to mean something. So
absolutely right. Yeah. It would be way worse if you came in every day hating it, right? So you better love it. Yeah. We're going to do it, and I need to be here. And there are real legitimate things about us, supporting and contributing to our families and everything else. And so you also want to love it while you do it.
You have to. You have to. And I do want to ask you, I have to ask you a sales question too, Karen, because for my sales folks out there, we have a lot that attend, right? So with the pandemic, like what are some creative ways or outreach do you prefer? Like, would you prefer emails or, would you prefer DMs on LinkedIn? Like, how do you prefer to be connected or communicated with?
Yeah, I think it varies. One of the things I thought about, if there is a connection, like if there's a connection made, a mutual connection, right? Doesn't the world kind of work through referrals and means, and that helps. And that I know you can't always do that, but that definitely helps because you immediately, it's all about relationships.
Absolutely.
I was thinking about this with my team just in the last week, and they will tell you this, they know this. I am not someone who believes in the big reveal. Right, for me, like, how sometimes people want to like hold and work, or sometimes like it'll happen and then you do like a ta-da, like here's my big reveal. And for me, I was like, no, like bring me along the journey. Like let's be iterative and collaborative. And so sometimes I find that when like a sales like will reach out to me from different companies, and instead of kind of like dangling a carrot, they actually like deliver it's like a micro conversion where you deliver some value right off the bat, and then you move to the next one. And I feel like customers all want to work like that. Like, let's have a value exchange along the way.
For sure.
Those tend to really rise to the top for me when somebody just out with the value
right from the beginning.
And give something. Those really stand out because you're like, thank you.
Right. And it shows that they did their homework and that they're coming to you with something that's going to be of value. And you're like, how did you know I was looking for fill in the blank? Great, let's continue. So speaking of what Jared was saying, I have a question for you about marketing and specifically about SEO. You've been in marketing for all these years, and we focus on SEO here at iPullRank. I'm wondering for you, how have you seen SEO over the years? What have you seen that's changed, and how do you see SEO for the future? That's a big question, but.
Right. Well, everybody, like, I hate to use the phrases that are so common now when people talk about content and content is king, but that is what has been so fascinating, throughout time and marketing and different companies that I've been in is just, again, there's this balance between what I was just saying about like the big reveal, because you need a hook, right? You do like that like element of surprise and hook and things like that in content. And yet then you do want to just find ways to deliver solid, good value. And so I think what changes across marketing is that customer expectations just keep rising.
Right.
They don't want you to be creepy, but everybody's starting to realize there's a lot of data that a lot of us have on. And therefore, there is the expectation that it becomes way more customized and way more relevant. And I think that the patience level of customers now around content and anything is lower, and their expectations of delivering value is a lot higher, faster.
Right.
And that to me is like universal, but definitely applies in kind of SEO and when we're talking about content and how to create content that really.
Yeah, I'm sure that over your time at Ancestry, as the business was growing and all of this curiosity that people have developed over the last 15 years about where they come from, all people in the US and probably globally, I can only imagine what the SEO conversations must have been like, because people go from kind of Googling, like I would have just loved to have been able to sit in the room and just hear, and then see what the innovations were over time, because that had to have been a time where you were really refining your SEO plans.
Oh yeah, and especially there was so much personalized content, right? That you can surface. And so, way back in the day, we were talking about, feeder sites and how things kind of evolve over time.
Right.
And then I think the content delivery mechanisms keep changing, where we need to be and how we have to think about packaging up the content that makes it valuable for people. That's never going to stop changing in the technology world we're in right now.
Right, and how much more control the consumer has at moving your information around is also another piece of it. That pass along and how fast things move. Like you can post something and it can just fly. because Jared gave it to me and then I gave it to the next person. It's not like, I don't know if you guys remember, I don't know everyone's age, that terrible period in time where you see those emails that would be forwarded and it would just be like forward.
Yeah.
I'm happy we've moved beyond that. And now we can just click a button and just share. Ooh, that is terrible.
Yeah, I was gonna say to piggyback off your point, Karen. I think that's like super important. Like what I usually cause with that, I think is like a frictionless sale, and I think that's where the content comes in, right? So it's just like, how do we create content that speaks to our user? How do we get away with the old O3 methodology where we can collect data but provide a good experience, right? And that's knowing more about your audience, right? How are sales and marketing collaborating? What do we know about these particular users and these segments? And then how can we sell without selling necessarily, right? Because we know what we want. The buyer patterns have changed, right? If I want something today, I just want to get it. I don't want to wait till tomorrow. I don't want to hear from sales 3 days later. I just want it now, right? And as long as you shifting towards that, I think organizations need to be thinking about that. How do we make it frictionless? Is our content answering the right questions? Are we providing an experience? What do they expect from us? And how do we hammer down on that?
Totally, I could not agree more.
Yeah.
And then you're in a unique situation now because it's banking and you're helping small business owners. You're teaching. You spend a lot of time informing because people are asking a question and they don't know what they don't know. But when they find a place like Lendio, you guys are creating a platform that allows them to learn an awful lot and sometimes feature folks that you've helped so that people can see themselves within what you've done and then they become a partner of yours. And that's a really strong way of doing things as well.
Yeah, and this company here is another, I've been very privileged to work in companies that are just authentically mission driven, at its core, and for sure. And now with Lendio and when I think about small business owners, the variety of small business owners out across the United States, right? People who have pretty big organizations who might have chains or multiple enterprises to, a mom who is running a business out of her house to a restaurateur or all of these different things. But it doesn't mean that just because you run a small business that you are good at marketing and that you understand how to capital and think about all of your finances and everything else. And so one of the things that I think about is, again, how, to your point, like how can we deliver value? Because I do think that there sometimes is a stigma for customers against accessing capital. They feel like that, taking on a loan would be a negative for their business rather than looking at it as a growth opportunity.
Right.
Yes.
And so I think in this time period of 2020 and when everything with the PPP, I always want to say PPP program, but that's why I hesitate because it's literally Paycheck Protection Program. I'm saying it twice. So with PPP and COVID, I think a lot of people then really, it was more like, hey, have you gotten your PPP loan? And it removed some of the stigma around it, which is going to help us all help each other again in this world to make sure that people, like small businesses, are thriving. I know that was a little bit of a tangent, but it goes back to what content do we need right now? Like we need different content now than we needed a year ago.
Exactly.
Our customers, and we need to be really on top of what they need right now and try and deliver that.
I think you made a great point too. I think what we don't speak about a lot is the fact that it was like a race to who answers the questions to the customer first in that particular moment, right? So it's like we're all racing to reach that customer. We know they have the questions, but who gets there first and who builds that credibility wins the race. And like the fact that you guys were able to pivot on the fly, there's no instruction manual, you just had to know it. And I'm really, really impressed with what you guys have done. Like Lendio has been the leader in that. So
thank you so much. It's kind of an honor and a privilege again to do what we were able to do because it was so meaningful. So, and we're still doing it.
Yeah.
Still in it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I know. I would love to continue this. I know we got down to like a minute left, but I don't know if you have a hard stop, Karen. But I do want to thank you once again. If you want to keep going, I got 5-10 extra minutes. Do you want to go? Or?
5 minutes. Yeah, we're good.
All right, cool. Santa, do you have an extra question? I'm looking at my list right now because I have a few. I would love to just know, what professional accomplishment are you most proud of and why?
Oh, that's a good one. Really good question. let's see. I'll give two that are totally different, and it's kind of related to something that we were talking about early on, like Chantel's first question. So when I was at Ancestry, and there was a moment where I started working on the Canadian business out of the U.S. office, and they wanted to create a local presence to actually run the company out of in market in Canada, in Toronto. And they offered me that role, and when I took on that role, first of all, personally, that's what that meant, was that my husband was going to have to sell his business off. I had a 1 and a 3-year-old at the time. And so he sold his business off. That would mean he sold his business off, and he was going to be a stay-at-home dad. So that's where we had to work through all of those kind of conversations. And professionally, I had no idea how to do that job. Like, it was I knew pieces of it, but I was this marketer, and I became a general manager over the entire market. And so I did everything from content acquisition, working with the government to acquire historical records, to writing TV scripts, to placing, ads for the first time ever in a display advertising network. So,
oh wow,
so far above my head, and I knew it, and I did it, and I just, it was career changing for me. It was life changing for me. I could go on and on about what it meant for my family, because there were some like personal things that really were really important, like key development things for my son who has special needs, and just that time. So there was just so much into that. But the fact that we did it, and I say we because my husband and I were in that together, but the fact that we did it, and we invested, and I knew it was over my head, and I did it anyway, and I just had an attitude of learning and investment and mentoring. And I think I developed a lot of my leadership approach from that, being scrappy, being ruthless in prioritization, like, failing fast, learning fast, all of those things from that experience. And so that was game changing. And I will give one more, not to go on and on, but I'll give one more that was just a professional moment that's completely different. And this was, again, I was at Ancestry for 13 years, so it's easy to have a lot of Ancestry examples. But
oh, for sure.
So one of my last big campaigns at Ancestry was internally called Declaration Descendants. And what we did was and some people knew, but most people did not, we tracked down heritage and found a whole host of people who were related to a founding father. We gathered them all together, created a commercial, a video with them, and recreated the John Trumbull painting where they're all standing around signing. And when you look at that room, it was representative of every, color, shape, male, female, background, occupation across the board. And just to be part of that campaign and put the entire campaign together in and of itself was incredibly fun. It was just really diverse, everything from painting a mural on a building in New York and the PR around it and everything else. But I tell you, that day, where really 2 days where we spent that time together with that group of people who were descended from founding fathers, and just to see what it meant to them and how they made those connections and how they connected to each other, and how that is so much more representative of the way our country really is today.
Yeah.
It was, again, one of just the most amazing moments I have had in my career. I don't know if I'll ever be able to replicate that experience. And it was
amazing campaign. That sounds amazing. I'm like, who was I? Was I down with George Washington? What's up with that? I would love to know. Probably. And also, I want to say shout out to your husband, because he sounds like an amazing man. I love the teamwork aspect. I love the fact that you guys are working to go to whether with that. Like, most men are going to be like, I want to keep my job. I want to do this, my business. This is what I work for. He said, no, I'm going to sell it off. I'm going to work with the family. You go do what you need to do, and I got your back. And I love that. Like, I love that. I want to get him on for Father's Day or something like that. Please, let's set that up. I'm going to get him on. And we're going to talk. He's going to give me some tips.
Yeah.
For sure.
definitely. I mean, somebody else pointed that out to us sometime. They said, "You make such a good team," and that was years ago. And I thought, "Oh yeah, that is a good way to think, right? Like we are a team.
It's a
That's
great
what we
way.
do. We fill in. We have different roles. Sometimes we play offense. Sometimes we play defense. Sometimes we play both. Whatever. Like
Yeah, great analogy. Yeah.
This is great. I don't have any other questions. I know Jared, did you have another question for
No,
Karen?
no, I think that was great. I enjoyed this conversation a ton.
I really want to thank you for coming out, representing women in the C-suite. The more the merrier. Every time we see another woman doing it, it allows another woman to think, oh, this could be me. And I just want to thank you very much for giving us your time, 35 minutes. We really appreciate it. We know you're busy.
oh no, it's
Yes.
a privilege. Like I said, it's super fun. Loved talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. Really.
Thank you.
No, it's our pleasure, Karen. Thank you for taking the time out your day. For all those who are listening right now, please make sure you go to Karen's page, connect if you can. You know, there's a lot of content out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And also make sure you go back to the iPullRank website because we need to show the traffic for this. So please, thank you, to be honest.
And again, thank you for your partnership with us at Lindio. Like we love working with you. Anyway, great relationship there too.
I can't wait to meet you guys in person as soon
I know.
As soon as things allow.
I want to
And it's
go.
been a long time. I will New York, and you can come out here too. We'll do both.
Cannot wait.
If you're in New York, lunch on us for sure. That's not even a question. So thank you so much, Karen. And we'll see you next time. And we'll see you next week on Rankable. Thank you all for joining. And Karen, thank you so much. Have a great one. Talk soon.
Bye, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.